Hey, this is Arsena from Rambling Rican. This is actually my back bedroom with the sun. I'm trying to chase it. It's kind of in between, so it's kind of all over the place. I look like crap. I haven't been sleeping all that well all these days, and I'm in the process of editing the next episode for Animation Hangout, but I've been really distracted. And as you can tell from the title, I know some people, I know it's a little weird, but some people don't know that I'm Puerto Rican, even though my tagline has always been Rambling Rican, and if anything, that's what it stands for. I was born and raised in the United States. In fact, I'm first generation, where my generation was the one that most people that left the island in the 1950s, 40s and 50s, moved to the United States and had their children and raised them there. So I'm part of that generation. My parents' generation, born and raised on the island, and then everything before that, all over Europe and the Middle East. So, but that's not what I'm talking about. I've been distracted by a lot of the, I guess, the politics and crap that goes with all of this. When you're born and raised in a tropical island, you kind of know these hurricanes are coming. Puerto Rico has always been interesting because it's unique to even just their neighbors, which are U.S. Virgin Islands. U.S. Virgin Islands, almost nobody ever talks about those. And they're in worship than we are. I mean, it's like by a lot. They're much smaller. There's no mountains to stop anything, so when they get hit in the teeth, I mean, they're just leveled, and no one seems to really talk about those. I think the difference with Puerto Rico has always prided itself in being sovereign, self-governing, sort of like the mix between independent and state without being either, and it's always been a topic of discussion in my family for the entirety of my 45 years. I'd have to go back to the 40s and 50s. Puerto Rico was given to the United States in the late 1800s as basically spoils of war. Puerto Rico was a territory of Spain for, God, almost 400 years at that point. And Spanish-American War ended, Spain lost, and they had to give up territory, and Puerto Rico and the United States is like, yeah, we'll take Puerto Rico. Where it is in the Caribbean is perfect, and still is to this day, actually. And so for the most part, Puerto Rico has been basically left alone by the United States to govern itself. It wasn't until, I would say, the late 40s, I think my parents keep telling me. They were born in the 40s, late 40s. And there was a lot of poverty and people dying of starvation, malnutrition, and all these things. And that's when the United States created what is called, I see I'm thinking in Spanish now, basically is when they became a commonwealth, and that was in the 1960s, and created the situation that we have today, which is sort of like a weird status quo. It's sort of higher than a territory but lower than a state. You get all the federal funds, you get Social Security, you get everything, but in exchange for being able to govern yourself, you lose federal voting rights. And you know, my family's been basically evenly split between, there's three parties in Puerto Rico, so it's not like a Democrat or Republican. They're basically three levels of liberal. It's always been that way, so I'm not at all surprised. You have the far left wing, which is the independent party. It's basically, screw it, we want to be by ourselves, you know, get away from the United States entirely. They're now in the teens. Before it used to be single digits and a joke, and slowly but surely it's been going up. And then you have the even split between the what they call Popular Party, which are the more moderate wing, and then you have I still call them left. They keep calling them Republicans, and they're not Republicans by any stretch of the imagination. The Nuevo Progresista, which would be New Progressive Party. They're the ones that want to be a state, and so it's been really weird because every single time there's an election, which always falls on the United States presidential year. So never visit Puerto Rico during presidential year. Not necessarily because of what's going on in the United States, it's because people kill each other in the streets, because it literally means how are you going to define what happens to the country as a whole, as opposed to any social views or even economic views. I mean, it's literally life and death, and has always been that way. And so over, I would say, I think it was like late 80s, early 90s. I know it was during the Clinton administration. There had been a lot of loopholes that were created to create, like hedge funds and stuff like that. And I'm sure you've heard about that in the media. But this has been going on since the 60s. Puerto Rico has never really been good in being able to self-govern. The island is too small. It's smaller than, I think it's the size of Rhode Island. I know it fits in South Jersey, that's on. It's 100 miles by 30 miles. That's it. And like two little specks of islands that you can hop over very easily, called Culebras and Vieques. And Vieques, that has an S. Yes, I'm Puerto Rican, so I swallow all my S's, and yeah. So that just kind of goes that way. But so over the past 10 years specifically, as the debt specifically to the United States has gone higher and higher, Puerto Rico's lost a third of their entire population. And that's something that's very underreported. I think it was last year that some note was given to the actual economic crisis in Puerto Rico. I'll put a link to that. I don't agree with all of the views that are in there, and that's not important. It's the idea of what actually is happening on the island. And it got to the point where, and this has been going on for several years, like years, where all of a sudden you'd lose electricity for hours at a time, sometimes days at a time. If you're up in the mountains, God bless you if you even have electricity for a week. Running water is occasionally, and that happens. Puerto Rico's government, instead of kind of dealing with those issues, always keeps running to the United States for money. And so their version of cost cutting is cutting hospitals and schools and police departments. I don't know, maybe your salary, or learn how to organize things. I mean, the electrical grid is older than me. My dad told me. And he was around before I was, so in fact, he was one of the last ones to leave the island. My mom came from a family that, when the floodgates opened in the 50s, again, I had told you that there was a lot of basically famine going on in Puerto Rico. So most people you don't have money to leave the island. The ones that are living in the island now just can't leave. So what would happen is someone would start making money and start buying airplane tickets to send one person at a time. And this would go on for months and even years. My grandmother left to New York with her 2 babies. She had 7 of them. And slowly but surely, she'll start asking for one each year. Her husband stayed behind to pay the bills, and my mother grew up basically as Heidi up in the mountains. Most family members had no idea when they were going to call for her. She didn't leave until she was 7. And I think grandma left when she was 3. So it was it was an interesting time, and then all of that came to bear in the last 10 years because it's the second migration, and a lot of my family members moved here, but the poorer ones stayed behind. And so every single time hurricanes come by, I panic because they have nowhere to go. So Irma came past. I remember this distinctly. I'm talking to one of my cousins, one of my several cousins, but one of my cousins. I had left home when I was 15, and I wanted to like straight up run away. Nobody knew where I was going, you know, that sort of thing. And my dad and my mom negotiated with me, going, at least allow us to know where you're going. And so they negotiated with my aunt in Puerto Rico to move in with her. During that year, my parents divorced anyway. And I lived with my aunt in Caguas. You guys probably know the name now because that was the hardest hit. In fact, it was a Category 5 hurricane. The eye of a Category 5 hurricane in the middle of that town, 1,200 feet in the air, is staggering. You know, I went to school there. I went there in 11th grade. And so Irma came by, and it wasn't changing course for a while. And we're seeing this monster just go across the Atlantic. And I'm on the phone with my cousin. Her name is Damaris, and I would call her Mari. And I would start sending text messages every hour, because by that point they were doing every hour. And it was supposed to go north. And everybody swore it was going to go north. And I kept going, still 185 west. Has it moved yet? No, it's still west. An hour would pass west, and then I remember calling west northwest, and it moved. Sorry if I'm shaking. I was trying to do this portable because it keeps me from yakking too much because my arm will get tired. So, the eye wall had started to replace, and as a result it kind of popped north, and then it started moving away, and even then they lost electricity for a week. It was funny because my cousin had just gotten electricity, and all of a sudden I said, dude, there's Maria out there, and by that point it was like just a Category 2. I'm sitting there talking to her, and the 11 o'clock comes in, and I'm like, okay, it's a Cat 3. 2 o'clock comes in, it's a Cat 4. 5 o'clock comes in, and it was a 5, and it was so low, Puerto Rico wasn't gonna miss this. And so she's like, well, is it gonna turn? It's like, where's it gonna go? Even if it goes, something's gonna hit, because Irma didn't make landfall, but Maria was going to. And one of her last words was, por fin no van a borrar, which is, they're gonna erase, we're gonna be erased off the face of the earth. And those were her last words. I don't know. It's been a week. Power's out. They say it could be 6 months. Water's out. They're up in the mountains. These were all farm families. And of course everything's restored in San Juan because, God forbid. But you know, you have all of these U.S. relief reports. I didn't vote for Trump at all. I didn't vote for, in fact, I didn't vote the election because I thought Clinton was worse. But why are they giving him crap? He declared a state of emergency a full day before the hurricane even came. This was after he already did all that for Irma. Declared disaster before the governor even asked for it. Ships were already there. In fact, they were waiting in San Juan until they basically unclogged the port of the debris of all of the ships that sunk. They didn't get to open the second of the third airports until yesterday because the place was obliterated. The one in the south, they haven't even touched the other one. They haven't been able to go up the mountains. I said, my aunt has Alzheimer's. You know, she's up in the mountains. I live way up in the mountains, 7 kilometers up. It's one of the rare times I actually use kilometers because that's what they use over there. which is I think about 3 miles. As soon as they start going up the mountain, all you see is debris and houses, and all that place was flooded. Like, that first section always gets flooded because it's right next to a river. There's nothing. They could only get, someone said, 0.4 kilometers up the mountain. That's nothing. That's the entrance. And so they started doing aerial views once they finally got out of the damn capital, and all they saw was debris. There's places in Hajuja, which is basically the mountain range that can go up to like 4,000 to 5,000 feet up there. And all they saw was blown out roads, debris everywhere, not a single house standing, in landslides for as far as the eye can see. I don't know if my family's dead. So, I gotta thank William, of course, my husband of 20 years, Don. I've been, like, I was supposed to do the animation hangout thing last week, and we ended up doing it on Monday, and I'm, like, editing it, and I always have Twitter, underneath, and, of course, I have all the news sites up, regardless of their political bent. Any news, I'm one of the news channels in Puerto Rico, I think it's Telemundo. They're taking their news crews to the center of the towns, to any place that they can get to, so they can have people talk to the camera so they can tell us that they're okay. And of course I haven't seen them because they haven't been able to go up the mountains. So, both sides of the family, my dad's side is on the right side of the family, right side of the island, and my mom's side's on the left. They haven't been able to even, like, not even the news crews have been able to go to the west side. It's gone. So I started getting angry when people start politicizing this crap. I get angry because this has been a problem from the beginning. This has been going on for years, and the only thing different is that Category 5 hurricane decided to finally hit. You know, they've been lucky. You know, they've been lucky. Hugo was 3, and it practically leveled the place when I was there for Gilbert, which was the year before, which is still the second worst hurricane of all time, that hit the island. And then Hugo was the following year. I just got back from the United States, to the United States by that point. And then George was, I think, 98. The big difference with George was that it went from one side of the island to the other. They'd never seen anything like that. It was like just completely deforested. All the trees were clogging every port. A couple towns were literal lakes, 20 feet of water, 2-3 miles inland. It's the tropics, we kind of know that. So this one, I think the only thing that's different is they haven't been hit with a Cat 5 since 89 years. Again, we've been lucky. Although I think they're still saying it's a Cat 4. I don't know, since all the instruments got blown out. And have you seen that radar? So anyway, I see that I'm starting to run out of time, which is good because my arm's tired. But pray for everybody involved. Pray for all of those millions, and there are millions of Puerto Ricans that live in the United States or anywhere else, Spain, Venezuela, doesn't matter, that are desperate to find anything about their families that are lost in the political shuffle, because plenty of relief has arrived, just the government has no idea what the hell they're doing. They have no idea how to distribute it, and sometimes I wish just US would just make them pay the piper and just say, you had a good run, we're gonna take you over now. Because if this were a state, this wouldn't be happening. This just would not be happening. So, either way, I'll let you guys know if I hear anything in the meantime. So if you see I'm a little discombobulated,